Habitat loss is the greatest threat to our flats fisheries. That's why Bonefish and Tarpon Trust has been committed to restoring and conserving essential fish habitat for more than 25 years. From Florida to Belize, from the Bahamas to Mexico, we're restoring natural flows, replanting mangroves, and opposing unwise coastal development. But we can't do it alone. Help us bring science to the fight for the future of the fisheries we love. Become a member today at btt.org.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Hi, this is the NRA podcast. I'm Jeff Johnston. I'm sitting beside one of the best hunters I know, well known worldwide. Larry, you are a legend. If you have a nickname that everybody knows, you know you've made a mark. This is Mr. Whitetail, Larry Weishuhn, and Larry, we are in the wilds of West Texas where the wind blows constantly.
The wind blows constantly, the dust is thick, but what a great place. I mean, a huge operation here in terms of a cattle operation that really does well with the wildlife. They've done an absolutely fantastic job. And the habitat that we have here is really nice because it supports a lot of different wildlife, as you've seen while you've been here.
This is what I wanted to talk to you about. That was a great lead-in. You're a biologist by trade, and you've been writing. I've been writing for 25 years. You've been writing before I was even a twinkle in the old man's eye. So you've been
yes, at least
a long time. And before that, you were a biologist, and that's why you've been known as Mr. Whitetail. But there's a very interesting whitetail here, and we're going to get into it. But we are near the border, and I'm not going to say exactly where we are. No secret, but we're on a big cattle ranch, 40,000 acres or so. But the game here is incredible, and to people, if you fly over this country, a lot of city folks call this flyover country. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the species and some of the diversity that are here? And this is not like your normal hill country or South Texas. This is West Texas in the mountains. Could you tell us about that?
It truly is. We're probably at about 5,000 feet or so here, and we're close to the closest peak is probably about 75 to 8,000 feet. A lot of people don't even realize we have that kind of high in elevation here in Texas when you get right down to it. The habitat is part of where we are, is part of the Chihuahuan Desert if you get right down to it. So the vegetation is everything here for the most part has got spines, stickers, something that's going to scratch you, try to catch your cat claw. There's an unbelievable amount of cat claw, and if you look at our hands, you probably see all the scratches where we went through. But that said, the wildlife here is very, very diverse in so many different ways. If you look at the native species that we have here, you have Javelina to start with. You're talking about big game. Of course, Boone and Crockett just recently put them onto the list of in the record book kind of thing. But beyond that, you've got desert mule deer, and these are the Otocolis hemionus crooki, C-R-O-O-K-I.
Is that what I shot tonight?
That's what you shot tonight, and you shot a very really good specimen. Unbelievable.
I appreciate that, amigo. I appreciate that. Larry passed this
I take care of my friends.
I honestly don't think that you saw the double drop times at a mile away.
No, you're right.
Or were you just being charitable?
I was being charitable to begin with, but I did not see and the mass and a few other things. So had I seen all that, I probably would have switched to being a mule deer hunter. And particularly after I saw the one that Fred shot, I'm going, thank God Fred saw him first, because if I had to, I'd have shot that deer.
Well, a hot dog, what a deer. I'm just tickled.
But we do. We have the Coues subspecies here as far as mule deer is concerned. And then you talk about whitetail. Of course, before we get into that, we've got coyotes, bobcats, the occasional mountain lion that comes through this area. Occasionally there's a black bear that comes through these areas as well too. All those are native species. Bird-wise, lots of quail in terms of the scaled or blue quail, but then also we have the little Montezuma quail, or the Merns rather, and so very unique bird find, only in certain areas kind of thing, but a lot of mourning doves. I think there are a few white wings that come through here, and then from the songbirds, there's just an unbelievable amount of things that come through here. But getting back to the big game species, we do have the little Carmen Mountain Whitetail here.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
I fancy myself, not like you, but kind of a whitetail guy.
Yeah.
I've shot California blacktails and whitetails. One of my favorite hunts in this continent is a Coues deer. I didn't even know that such a little whitetail existed. Can you tell us about Carmen Mountain Whitetails, and where is the Carmen Mountain?
The Carmen Mountain Whitetails were named after the Del Carmen's, a mountain range just south of here, not that terribly far. And it's a little whitetail species that's actually smaller than a Coues deer when you get right down to it. In the years when I've hunted them in the past in Mexico and a little bit here, I've killed bucks that would field dress like 65 pounds. So you're talking about a less than 100-pound animal when you get right down to it. They're found primarily above 4,500 feet elevation in Texas and down into Mexico. But their range is relatively restricted. Years ago, you heard people talk about fantails possibly, but they were the fantails of... and the reason they call them that is because their tail is every bit as long as our regular Texas whitetail or Canadian whitetail or whatever. But when you put that same size tail on a body that weighs 100 pounds or less, it looks absolutely huge. So a lot of times you see one run, and they do flag like a regular whitetail. A Coues deer will do this with the tail over the top. They flag like this. So when they run, that tail looks like it's 6 to 8 inches wide and about 12 to 14 inches tall.
Wow.
I read, although I cannot substantiate it, that there's actually possibly another vertebra in that tail compared to our regular whitetails. But they're
Sounds
small.
like we need to ground check one.
Well, I intend to, and I'm actually counting the vertebra whenever I get one down. But they're a fascinating little animal in terms of their antlers are not very huge, very comparable, and slightly smaller than most Coues deer. If you're into scoring type things, if a Coues deer scores, or Coues deer, depending on where you're from, how you pronounce it, scores 100, it's a really good one. Here, when you get right down to it with the little Carmenensis subspecies, to me, anything that scores like 85 or better is one heck of a deer.
Okay. You know, it was very surprising to me, and you were telling us about these deer, and they're on the menu now. There are not very many of them here. No. But what surprised me a little bit is because generally there's the Bergman's Law. You know, it says everything that's farther away from the equator is bigger, and it kind of, you can see that from the Canadian whitetails on down to your Midwestern whitetails, on down to my Oklahoma whitetails, to the Texas whitetails, South Texas. Then you get Coues deer that are tiny, but then there's an anomaly. Yeah. If a Carmen whitetail, if they're smaller than the Coues, that's just interesting to me.
You know, you hear a lot about the Coues deer being the smallest of the whitetail subspecies, if you will. But to me, these are very comparable in size. The true Carmenensis deer. Now, a lot of people will take a deer somewhere else from here in a lower elevation, and they'll say, man, this is an absolutely fantastic Carmen. He scored 135. Well, probably a Texas subspecies.
Okay. And
so very often you hear people talking about it, but most of the time the really big Carmenensis deer, they're not true Carmenensis.
Okay. Well, you know, this is the country, you mentioned the Chihuahua Range. It's the same country that Pancho Villa hid out in. So if you're Pancho Villa in his procession, if you're a little deer, you can hide out pretty well. So tell us about the hunting here, the challenges, and this is the NRA podcast, of course. So tell us about some of the hardware, guns and bullets and stuff that you prefer, even the optics, if you will. And have you hunted these things before?
Let's start there with where I have hunted these things. First time I hunted these things was back in 1970. I had read about them for many years. Byron Dalrymple was a writer who wrote about hunting western part of the state of Texas for whitetail, the little Carmen Mountain Whitetail or fantail, and desert mule deer. And he did a story every year in Outdoor Life and some of those, and I could not wait for that story to come out. And that's how I initially learned about the Carmenensis species. Then as a biologist, we started looking at them. But in 1970, I had an opportunity to hunt here, not that far from here, actually, when you get right down to it, and was able to take one. and that one was a 4.5-year-old deer, and he field dressed like 55 pounds. Tiny. He was a big forkhorn, but an older deer, 4.5-year-old deer. But that one was shot with a 257 Roberts that I used to carry, and I was here with 4 other guys. One of them was Larry Godfrey, who used to write for the Brian Daily Eagle. Had a first TV show. He and I did some TV stuff together way back when. Joe Palermo was a taxidermist who was here with us, and then a guy named Stan Slate, who got to be the outdoor writer for the Houston Post way back when. The 4 of us were here and hunted. So that was my introduction to him. And I've hunted him a couple times. Hunted with Steve one time or two, or once, and then I've hunted him in Mexico down close to the Del Carmen's a couple different times. The firearms are such that these shots here can be anywhere from 20 steps to 400 yards. So you need to kind of be prepared for, and it's like cutting Coues deer. You spend a gosh awful amount of time glassing. They tend to hang around where the oaks are. We've got several different species, but I think the primary species is probably Gamble's oak, which is an evergreen and occasionally produces acorns. But they like to hang in those areas, kind of thing. And again, you find them usually from there to the very top of the hills or the top of the mountains. So, but you're spending a lot of time with the spot and scope, a lot of time with binoculars. Lots of good binoculars out there. The ones that I'm using happen to be with stealth vision, and my spot and scope that's same way. It also happens to be the scope that I have on the rifle that I have.
It looks similar to a Hubble telescope.
Well, in a way. In a way. I know that you've had the opportunity to meet Dr. John McCall and Joe Cunningham and see how some of these optics are put together. And I'll give him a plug because for the first time ever, he is a world-renowned eye surgeon. Well, he started with the brain, went to the optical nerve, went to the eye, and then built the scope from there. Most scopes are built here, and they're trying to adapt them to the eye. So he incorporated a lot of things that he learned as a surgeon as well, as far as the human eye is concerned. But great optics in terms of I've shot them with 257 Roberts, 30-06, 270. You want to have something that's relatively flat shooting because the distances can be near.
What do you think's perfect for it if you just had to pick, and you weren't going to shoot any other game species, but for one of these deer, what would be your choice?
Oh my God! I'd probably go back to the 07x57, which I absolutely love. But anything like the 270 or these days with the PRC cartridges that we have, and the Creedmoor. I mean, to me, this deer is about, and the mule deer here too, well. Yeah. It does well on these kind of deer here. But so to me, you're talking about something that's relatively flat shooting, but extremely accurate as well too, because as you kind of learn, sometimes those shots are not perfectly set up to where you got a full broadside shot and you got a little window that you got to put a shot through. Yeah. So you need to have something that's extremely accurate. But then when it hits that animal, does tremendous amount of damage, put that animal down as quickly and humanely as possible, as we all try to hope that it will happen. So to me, whatever you're shooting, get to be very accurate with it from 100 yards out to 400 yards with it, and hopefully you'll shoot your deer at 20 yards. But have optics. I like optics that are in terms of scopes that are variable. Because if I'm looking at that, I can start it at low power and I can kind of crank it up a little bit. As I do, I can maybe pick a hole through some of that kind of thing as I'm breaking it up. So I like the variable scopes. Sure. We have that opportunity here. But and of course, with ammo, you know what I shoot. So I love
Hornady.
Yeah. I love Hornady. Yeah. And I've been shooting it for many, many years. And in my guns, it is extremely accurate.
Yeah.
And their bullets are well done too, in terms of accuracy, but also in terms of when it hits something, puts that ammo down very quickly. The thermal performance is phenomenal.
A 6.5 on paper for everything that people make fun of. It's academically, you just can't get much better, on paper. And I shot my big mule deer with it tonight. Yeah, and I took a few steps and keeled over. So
and that was a 200-pound deer.
Yeah, that was a big,
if not more.
Was a big buck.
Old buck. Big old mature buck.
What I love about you, sir, is that. Larry, I brought this deer in. I was very proud of him. Not a giant deer, but a big body size deer. But, as far as rack size, whatever, I'm proud of him. Very unique. But the first thing that you did, look how old that, and you put your finger, you went about elbows deep in the deer's mouth and said, that buck's about 8 years old. And that's what makes me happy. But there are very few people in camp that could feel the molars
and
say
to me,
8 years old.
Unless that rigor mortis is set in, and then when we pull the skin off and all that, I'll try to go look. But to me, personally, I like to see herds that have some older deer in it. And obviously, this place is not. Be very open about it. I don't think this deer herd ever even knows that they're being hunted because they take so relatively few deer when you get right down to it. And that's one of the reasons, such as the deer that you shot and the deer that Fred shot, for the crook-eye subspecies in this type of habitat, they're just phenomenal. Yours wasn't very wide, but the massiveness was there, and he carried that mass all the way through and had like almost double drop. I'm calling it almost double drop. Just the best way. That split.
It was triple. It was triple drop. I might have to school you in some mule deer stuff. You're Mr. Whitetail, but
okay. I'll take that.
Well, we're having so much fun, and you haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I think that your day is coming tomorrow. But just like out here, when there's glass involved, I mean, you just have to put in time. You really do.
You do. As we were talking about earlier too, I'm here specifically to hunt the little Carmen Mountain Whitetail. Not to say that if I see a mule deer that's bigger than either one that you two guys shot, which is not going to be easy to do, almost impossible. I might switch to becoming a mule deer hunter. But yes, to me, the Carmen Mountain species, there are not a whole lot of them. There's enough of them to where there's a good viable population, and they're not endangered by any form or fashion kind of thing. And so I'm looking for anything over about 2 years or 3 years of age when you get right down to it. Antler-wise, there's going to be anything from a 4-corn to maybe a little 8-point that, as I said, if I'm really lucky, we'll score 85 or thereabouts. But to me, this is not about scoring. It's about the animal in the hunt. And, of course, the people I've been with and that have shared the camp with the young lady that's here and the older guy that's with her, and then you, Mr. Chopsticks.
Man, we've had some. Well, I thought I was.
Miss Lauren, I apologize to him. Thank you for being here, and we've got Fred Eichler in camp, obviously.
Yes.
And
the
Fred's been one of my heroes for a long, long time because he's real, and he's a woodsman, and he understands wildlife, and he understands the importance of hunting, and he also knows how to get in and out of a place without getting lost.
We should just call him in here. You just get over here, Fred. Let's talk this out. I want to talk to you. One of the first times we met, though, was at the NRA meeting.
Right.
And this NRA is an NRA podcast, and we've breached the topic of guns.
Yes.
I wanted to get your opinion and on some Second Amendment stuff, and also your opinion of the NRA right now. And you have been the biggest NRA cheerleader and NRA supporter and advocate that I've known. You've talked to me. We've talked about this at length. But can you tell us about why you think the Second Amendment is so important, and secondly, your view of the NRA right now?
To me, the Second Amendment is what is it? It's the Second Amendment. Does that not say something that there's importance involved in it?
Yes.
Yes. And to me, that's always. Of course, I grew up in a hunting family around guns. And I've always had an appreciation for guns and the use of them, and was taught early on that guns can kill, but it's in the hands of what you do with it, kind of thing. And to me, these days, we have so many people out there who don't understand the importance of guns. If we didn't have them, we probably would have been invaded years ago by the Japanese. But they looked at it and said, wait a minute. How many people in that country own guns? Oh yeah, the vast majority of them. The largest army in the world when you get right down to it, because that acted as a deterrent then. It's acting as a deterrent right now. And to me, if it were nothing but that, the Second Amendment to protect our rights to own firearms and to utilize those firearms in appropriate times or in an appropriate time, all this country would be lost. Without the Second Amendment, to me, and our ability to own guns, this country will not exist in a relatively short period of time. So it's just paramount in so many different ways, not just for me, but from my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and everybody else is out there as well, too.
You talked about the armies real quick. Michigan alone, Texas alone, Ohio alone, all these states are 1,750,000 100,000. It used to be 1 million man armies alone. These own states that are armed and they know how to use them. But I interrupted you.
To me, again, going back to it's the Second Amendment,
yes.
and that tells you how extremely important, our ability to own firearms comes to be. And without it, this country will go away in a relatively short period of time. So for that, and from a hunting perspective, I love guns to hunt with. I've hunted with bows. I've hunted with all the other kind of things. So I appreciate the fact that they're supporting that right for me to be able to utilize my guns, whether it's a handgun, whether it's a rifle, whether it's a shotgun, even with a muzzleloader and those kind of things, that are out there as well. So even the air rifles that we have these days, which are really coming on strong in certain areas. But we need the NRA there in their presence. And you're asking about today with the NRA, that everything is dynamic. The world is dynamic, ever changing, and we have to learn how to adapt and change with some of the things. And you don't need to be on the leading edge of it, but you got to be real close. And with the NRA that we have right now, with the leadership that have come on board, from my looking from the outside in as opposed from the inside years ago, and we did a lot of things with the NRA, we've got fantastic leaders who have a great understanding of the necessity, not only the Second Amendment, but the necessity of having a large membership that can support, and when it comes time to write a letter, and that's something we need to look at very seriously. These days it's easy to send a text, it's easy to send an email, but one of the things that we learned over the years dealing with people who are in government is a lot of times a handwritten letter carries a lot more weight. And it's so uncommon to now when they get them, they go, oh my God, well, if this guy had took the time to actually write a letter and put a stamp on it and mail it to me, maybe I'd better listen to it. So to me, one of the things that we can do as those who support the NRA and support the Second Amendment is to get in touch with your legislators and your congressmen and all senators, talk to them, but also send them a letter, kind of thing. But again, going back, if you want to call it the new NRA, I'm strongly support where we're headed right now.
Have you met Doug Hammond?
I've had the opportunity to meet Doug. I met Doug years ago, and you graciously set up an interview.
That's right.
For me with my podcast, the DSC Campfires with Larry Weishuhn.
I was duck hunting at the time. We couldn't make it, but I remember that. Yes.
But you set up that, and I had an opportunity to sit down on a one-to-one basis and really visit with him. And while he was there, do the same thing. And of course, through the Dallas Safari Club. Our organization there is very supportive of the NRA as well too, and I urge anybody. I can't understand why anybody that has a firearm, or even wants to own a firearm, if you're a kid or whatever, all should be members of the NRA. It's in that number that there's so much importance in numbers these days.
If NRA's high water mark, it was over 5 million people. Now it's around 3.5 or so. But I sincerely believe with all my heart, I know this. We were NRA's viewed as the world's strongest lobbying organization, and it's not because of money. It's because people go together and vote as a block, and there's a whole lot more people that vote as an NRA block than 3.5 million. Whenever the magazine gets shared, people tend to vote. But point is, if there were 10 million NRA members, and I'll even say if there were 10 million just a gun group of any type and 10 million strong, there would not even be an issue in this country.
No,
and that's the fact. But I am biased, so I'm not going to speak a whole lot more than that. I wanted to hear what you thought about it.
Again, to me, if you own a firearm, if you think you want to own a firearm, you really need to be a member of the NRA. The cost is not that much. It's minimal when you get right down to it. When you look in terms of the importance of the NRA today, it's still the greatest lobbyist group out there. It's still that wall that sits between the bad guys and those of us who understand how important the Second Amendment is, not only to ourselves, but to our country and all those who follow. So we need the NRA. And like I said, it's dynamic. It changes. It has to change. So to me, having Doug there in terms of leadership, the people that he has pulled in, I've been really impressed with the people that he has pulled into that organization. To me, we just need to charge forward and become a member of the NRA.
Good man. Well, I see you at the NRA annual meeting in April.
You will this year.
You might be turkey hunting or something.
No, I'm not turkey hunting. I am going to be on some of that period of time, but I think I will be at the NRA meeting again this year. I've a couple of them over the years. But to me, that's always such a great time to spend time with like-minded people and to show our support of the NRA.
Well, I've had such a good time, Larry. You know, this is your country. Sometime you come to my island, which is Oklahoma, and I, kind of have to hold your hand a little bit. But down here, you pretty much know everything, and you kind of show me the ropes and tell me what to do. I've had such a good time. After you shoot your deer tomorrow, which I think is going to happen, what's next for you on the hunt? What's your next hunt?
I want to go back just a little bit on one thing. We talked earlier about what was our favorite place to go, and I think Fred asked, or you asked, and what state? And I said Oklahoma, and I love Oklahoma, but also love to rattle deer out of Oklahoma across the Red River into Texas.
Don't you do it?
Which I did this year.
Oh,
so
I'm a freedom guy.
That's what I love it.
I'm a libertarian, but there ought to be a law against it. There ought to be a law against it.
But from here, yeah, there's still a lot of hunting to be done here in Texas. When I leave this ranch here, I'm going to a place up in Snyder with a friend of mine, Craig Archer. We've hunted together a lot in the years past, hunting for regular whitetail, and then get home for Christmas, and then I'll spend some time hunting with probably with my two daughters and some of my grandkids in our little place, and then it starts all back over again. I've got Steve Hornady coming in to hunt bison on the Choctaw, and then from there it's one hunt after another, and even some out of country hunts after that.
We've had so many good experiences. I hope for many more, my friend.
I do too.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn has also been brought to you by the Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.